I don't think Jim Gavin would have looked kindly upon it, because there's a reason why Dublin haven't chatted.
Stop. He loves Diarmuid Connolly. That man could do that from the halfway line and he's alright.
But I bet you that's going to be highlighted numerous times in this video review. Dublin probably did it the day
It'll
after.
be brushed. This is Diarmuid Connolly and Jim Gavin. Will you stop?
Mickey Hart here. You're listening to the GAA Hour Football Show.
The GAA Hour with Colm Parkinson is brought to you by Paddy Power, home of the Money Back Special.
I'm not finished yet. It took me a long time to get here.
Okay, so we talked on Monday about Dublin's last 10 minutes, 12 minutes from when they went a point behind or a man down, and how they hunted down the ball, and how, you know, it was incredibly impressive from them as champions, going for 5 in a row to get the draw when it looked like it was turning against them. Colm Keys has some stats in the Independent. He says in the period of 12 minutes and 10 seconds from when Kerry scored, the ball was in play for 10 minutes and 2 seconds, and from that Dublin had possession for 6 minutes and 39 seconds, just under double what Kerry had. A man down, the pressure of the 5 in a row, and they dominated the last 12 minutes, which I know we're repeating ourselves a little bit, but it's nice to have the actual stat on it, which you wouldn't have time to get on the Monday.
And it is, because I think on Monday I was like, Kerry shit themselves when they got in the lead. They didn't push on, and we were all sort of pushing that narrative that Kerry should have attacked a bit more, but shows there that
they tried to attack, they couldn't get out of their half.
They didn't have the ball for most of it. Dublin controlled the situation. Like, that's a long time for the ball to be in play as well.
It is a long time for the ball to be in play, but I suppose Kerry were dropping a lot of men behind the ball, so there was an element of, moving it around outside them a little bit, and they were trying to work a score, and they were taking a few pot shots. And there's a great stat of from Diarmuid Connolly. Gaelic stats have this, and the last player, Connolly tried one from outside the 45. The last Dublin player to attempt a shot from play outside the 45 in Championship football was who? Diarmuid Connolly. 2016. That's the classic, isn't it?
3 years ago.
Yeah, they didn't say the game in 2016, did they? I'm trying to think. At the end of the 2016 final, the first game.
The sideline kick.
Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah, but that wasn't outside the 45, because I don't remember Dublin doing anything as ambitious, or like, as you said, like outside the 45 since then, because Kieran Kilkenny was trying to wind down the clock at the time.
Yeah.
Connolly had the sideline kick. Cillian O'Connor gets up and goes up and gets the equaliser, and then I as I said, I can't remember Dublin doing any speculative shots since then. So it must have been just before that then.
It was a huge mistake from Connolly, that I remember talking about that at the time. He should have just kept that alive, instead of a pot shot. To be fair, Connolly, the shot he took on, at that time of the game, I thought it was the right shot to take on. He's excellent off the outside of his boot. He's right in the middle of the goals. Like, I thought the Brian Howard one from over on the right, even though it was closer in, was a more difficult outside of the right, and he sliced across it. I'd back Diarmuid Connolly 8 times out of 10 to have stuck that over.
Yeah, it was like a rugby getting thrown back to the 10.
The drop goal, yeah.
He had the space and time, and he pinged it just wide.
There wasn't much in it, I'd say. I didn't see a replay.
But I don't think Jim Gavin would have looked kindly upon it, because there's a reason why Dublin haven't chatted.
Stop. He loves Diarmuid Connolly. That man could do that from the halfway line, and he's alright.
But I bet you that's going to be highlighted numerous times in this video review. Dublin probably did it the day after.
It'll be brushed. This is Diarmuid Connolly and Jim Gavin. Will you stop?
Yeah.
Listen, we didn't get that. The video erased that. Sorry, Diarmuid, you're okay. Well, listen, just try and go a little bit closer the next time, Diarmuid.
I remember one time,
or Diarmuid, or whatever you might call him.
In a video review, you went through 1-on-1, and I was about 5 yards out and completely scuffed the shot straight into the keeper's hands. But as we were watching the video review, it jumped and then went on to the next phase of play, so it was great. But maybe something like that will deliberately happen for Connolly.
Yeah, it could happen. So we talked as well about Jim Gavin kind of freezing on the line. We talked about the substitution with Tommy Walsh and how Dublin didn't counteract that and left Kerry with 7 forwards, which looked against 6 backs. We talked about the Kerry bench making a big impact, and Jim Gavin not necessarily trusting his bench anymore. So, there's a stat, Colm Keys had this as well. He says, for the first time in 45 championship games, Jim Gavin didn't reach to deploy 2 more replacement options that were available to him. So he used 4 subs instead of 6, and he used 3 of those subs very, very late. Very late, 67 minutes. So, he doesn't look like he has any trust in his bench. Only once before against Kerry in the 2016 All-Ireland semi-final have Dublin not used a full complement of 5 subs or 6, right? So what is that in common with 2016? High pressure game, close. Jim Gavin freezes on the line. I'm telling you, I'm very kind of sure about this because Mick O'Dwyer, probably the most celebrated manager of all times, had loads of qualities. I pointed out one or two of his weaknesses, but one of Micko's weaknesses was freezing on the line in close games. Micko would empty his bench if we're winning really well, easy, you're relaxed on the line, or if we're losing really well. If the game's in a melting pot, he ain't doing anything. He's frozen. Now, I don't know if he's frozen or if they're just concentrating on the game so much and maybe Jim needed a selector to try and push these through. But Diarmuid Connolly just standing there for about 6-7 minutes with his top off, that's a manager not really being the ice-cold manager that we would have thought Jim Gavin was.
Yeah, and when the games are that tight, you're almost afraid of you interrupting, like, you know, when you messing with something. And
now we don't know how this feels, like, so it's hard to be too critical. But if we're judging managers off the highest standards, and Jim Gavin is, you know, the best in the business, well then I suppose we can judge him off those best in the business standards.
Could you not point to then the 2016 final replay and the 2017 game where Bernard Brogan, Cormac Costello in 2016, and then the bench kind of brought them home in 2017 against Mayo, where like they had to come on and make a difference. So I just thought it was an anomaly. I wasn't thinking back to the 2016 game, but I just thought that Gavin froze, particularly the last day against Kerry, but like before, he's used his bench really well. Yeah.
Now, were they? I suppose they were. Against Mayo, they went behind with Lee Keegan, but a few of those would have been on at that stage anyways. Like, I'm wondering if you're ahead. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Maybe it's a Kerry thing. I don't know. I will take on that. But I think Michael Darmacaulay, Bernard Brogan, Costello, and the form Costello was in, there are a lot more obvious substitutions. Maybe he just doesn't trust his bench, and it's not a matter of freezing. Maybe it's like, who can improve what's already there?
Well, especially this show. So he brought on Kevin McManaman with about 5 minutes to go. Now,
he doesn't look right.
Of course, but Kevin McManaman put in a couple of big tackles. But when you were bringing in Kevin McManaman a few years ago, it was right. He was going to terrorise whoever he was on. He was going to go straight at his man and brought a different dimension in attack to what Dublin had previously. Cormac Costello a couple of years ago came on and scored 3 points against Mayo, kind of from nowhere. But Costello this year isn't an unknown because he's been starting up until the Super 8s, and I think his confidence is a bit shot maybe because of that. So he's looking to who he has now, and that probably says a lot about him bringing on Diarmuid Connolly, because Diarmuid Connolly was nowhere earlier on the summer, and then he's all of a sudden catapulted in the pecking order ahead of Bernard Brogan, Owen O'Gara and others that have been there for years. So it just indicates a suspicion that we've had all along, that he doesn't have the same trust, near the same level of trust he had in his bench previous years.
But doesn't McManaman, the way he runs, he looks like he's not fully fit or something, do you know? Maybe he's just pushing on and he's had a few injuries. Just looks a good bit older. He doesn't look as lively or whatever. Now, we don't want to take it away from him. He did some huge work, and he's maybe set the tone in some of these turnovers, and Connolly as well.
Yeah, and in fairness, Gavin just didn't have a good game. Like, it wasn't good bench selections or leaving him so late. But then we talked about Cooper, and then starting him on Clifford was strange. Not moving him off him was another one. Davy Byrne had a good game, but he was free, so like, could you have used somebody better, like, or somebody more impactful?
No, Jim Gavin had a nightmare.
Yeah,
like, there's no doubt about that, and he will be going crazy to fix it. I'd say he knew he had a nightmare. He didn't. Jack McCaffrey got man of the match. He didn't allow him out to be interviewed. The broadcasters were told that Jim Gavin's the only one that's going to talk, and we know he's not going to give much away. But it's like they went into lockdown. I think they did that after the Mayo drawn match as well. I think they went into lockdown. That
sounds familiar,
because Mayo did all the media after that. Do you remember? And then they were criticised.
Somebody did an interview on the pitch immediately after the drawn game in 2016, and I'm pretty sure, as you said, that Dublin kind of went to ground. Yeah,
they went to ground. I don't think it did them too much. The replay was still close anyway, so it was all the one. So this Whelan and Brawley thing is still rumbling on. John McEntee was writing in the Irish News, and I thought he summed it up well. He said, to witness grown men transform into babbling babies as they talked over each other and spurted out a few flawed observations can only be described as daft, yet it was compelling viewing. I didn't find it compelling viewing. I turned it away, and most other people stopped watching it at that stage. It's not compelling to me. Anyways, Wheelo's had a change of heart. Wheelo, smart enough fella. The big mistake Wheelo made, he admitted he was biased, and I think that compromises him in forevermore for any Dublin game. He can't be on. He's biased. He's admitted to being biased. Gone. Forget about it. You can't be trusted anymore giving your opinion on Dublin. You've admitted you're biased.
He said he was biased. Yeah, he tried to claim that Pat Spillane was biased.
And in fairness to Spillane, wouldn't admit it. How could you admit it? How could you be... Number one, you should never be biased. People have to believe what you're saying is what you think. Or what have you got as a pundit? You're gone. You've got nothing. But anyways, Wheelo has at least admitted he was wrong. He says when you look back on it and look at the replays, even though Joanne showed him plenty of replays, he wouldn't bend that day, but then he had Brawley backing him up. when you look back on it and you look at the replays, as Cooper is going down, he does pull Clifford down with him. So it's hard to argue with Goff's decision. Now, I think he said that on some other RT show. So at least he's held his hands up and said he was wrong.
Yeah, but like, he didn't need hindsight to do that. Like, they watched the replay over and over and over, and Joanne said, like, she actually said, he's pulling his arm, he's pulling him to the ground, and he never once gave a tangible reason for why it was a foul in the other direction. They never, he just said, come on, like, you know, and then said he was biased. That bias thing's very silly. Like you want Leeds to win, I want Derry to win, you know, but it doesn't come into the analysis of it all.
No, and there's no, like, I actually think sometimes you're afraid of being biased and you're overcritical of your own county. Like, I'm actually the other way of it, you know. Like, I mean, that's being biased, and if one of your own county men gets sent off and you know it's a sending off and you're saying it wasn't, how can you do it? Like, I just can't comprehend that. I don't get it. But anyways, like, why go into punditry if that's what you want to be? Anyways, Brolly, of course, isn't admitting he was wrong. He's doubled down. He was on Radio Kerry. What he was doing on Radio Kerry, I don't know. He said, I thought the referee was being played by David. Look, I've done it myself. We've all been there, and you hope it will work for you, forcing Johnny Cooper to try and come around him. So he's shown in some way that he understands what was going on here. As soon as Johnny reached for him, well, then he went down. For me, it was a clear body check to start with. So now then in the very next sentence, he shows he doesn't have any idea of what's going on. He said, that's what I thought at the time, and that's what I think again today watching it. So it certainly wasn't a yellow card. So he is absolutely not admitting he was wrong. Like, I don't know what to think of Brolly anymore. I've gone off him as a pundit. I think he has agendas. I think he flip-flops so often you don't know whether he's being serious. It reminds me of Boris Johnson in a GAA punditry. Is he playing games? Why is he saying this? He had a predetermined idea that the Kerry Mafia got to Goff, so the minute Goff gave a decision against Dublin, he was going to say it was the wrong one because he's playing a game with Kerry pundits. You can't take him seriously, you know? So it's really hard. I find it really hard to listen to him waffling and then wondering, what angle is he coming at? What game is he playing? Do you know what I mean? It's a really weird one.
And then when you catch him out, like he did in the Gaelic Life, he just says, like, this isn't life or death, it's just football.
Well, see, I think that's Brolly at his very worst, because, like, that's what he said in Gaelic Life today. He says, those on social media would do well to remember we're discussing a game of football, not some heinous crime or shocking world event. Now, this will tell you how little self-awareness Joe has, because he would do well to think of that when he's calling Sean Cavan another man for a foul, when he's talking about Kieran McGeeney in awful terms and the cult of Kieran McGeeney because he's training his team the way the players demand professional standards, you know, and then Paul Grimley talking about him and his brother. What happened to it's only a game then? And if we criticise Joe, is it only a game? But when Joe criticises everyone else, it's obviously very serious and we're passionate Gaels and, you know, if we can't give you a strong opinion on something. What a weaselly thing to say. Like, leave me alone. It's only football.
And also, you're on the Sunday game. You're in the most, like, influential job on that Sunday.
Yeah.
Take it seriously, like, because everybody in Ireland is taking it seriously. This is the biggest event that's going on in the country. This is our national sport.
National game final. It's our national final. And it's something that is really, really important to everyone. And you're talking nonsense and people are criticising you. Take that on the chin. Don't make light of it when you're the worst probably at criticising people. And then, of course, he goes out to prove that he's not anti-Kerry. He goes to the Kerry Hotel and is tweeting out pictures of himself and Tommy Walsh and David Moran. But this is
what does that prove?
Well, it proves nothing. It proves that he went out there and he's probably trying to sniff around for information. And the two lads are worse to be getting in pictures anyways. But I'd say they don't care less. But that's another Brolly tactic. He says what he wants about you, and then when he meets you, he kills you with kindness. That you're actually almost like, whoa, geez, he's a very friendly man altogether. Like, you know, he's got a neck that no matter what he says about anyone, he'll still approach them and just be so really, really nice to them. Yeah, you just don't know what's going on with this. Tell you, it's Boris Johnson-esque. Yeah, when you deliver your message with such confidence. You know, and like that's what Boris Johnson does. It's just no matter if he's telling lies, he's just, you know, saying it in an entertaining type of way.
And then when called up on the substance of said comments, he just diverts it to what he wants to.
He could divert it, or he could say you're taking this way too seriously. But that's it. So, like, I mean, I don't really know what to think about that. Declan McBennett has been talking, so they're not changing their policy. John Fogarty had this in the Examiner. He says, there's no policy as regards how we choose our analysts or whether their own county is involved or otherwise. That won't change. That will continue to be the case. We will pick the best analysts for a game regardless of whether their county is involved or not. I think that's a mistake. I've no problem, and this is always with pundits down through since I started with media. It's nice to have a pundit from the county in an early championship game where you mightn't have seen much of them during the league, and they'll give you a little bit of insight on them. They'll know a bit more about that county. All-Ireland final, Dublin or Kerry. Kieran Whelan knows no more about Dublin than the three of us. Realistically, it's a shut-up shop. He knows very little more. He wouldn't have played it with any of them. I don't think he would have played with Bernard Brogan or maybe one or two of them from Owen. He was still around at the start of the Earwigs. Cluxton. You know, what's he offering? What's Pat Spillane offering from Kerry? And if these lads are not, you know, giving honest answers, and Henry Shefflin went, like, he was on it for the hurling and defended Richie Hogan, indefensible really at that stage. Henry made an all right point about your elbow staying up, but it was a wish, you know, it was a... You're plucking at straws, really. So, like, I mean, if the shift now in punditry has gone to you have to defend your own county no matter what, sure, then the halftime analysis is just, it's a farce. It's a joke. What's the point in watching it?
Which is exactly what we got.
Yeah, just go to Sky. But like, Sky is duller, but like, I mean, there's none of those games on it. Now, maybe people like those games. I can't imagine too many people liked to see the bit I saw where they're squabbling over each other over a referee decision. There was no real analysis of the first half.
It vexed me more than any piece of punditry I've seen in a long time. I couldn't believe that they were saying, with the images right, with the footage and the images right in front of them, that they were claiming that Johnny Cooper, that it should have been a free out. Never mind that Johnny Cooper should have got a second yellow. It really vexed me. And it vexed me again then. At least Kieran Whelan, I don't think he addressed it afterwards, but Brawley was doubling down. He was like, that's still at full time when they're probably been let know about the social media reaction and how everybody thinks you're wrong here, that he's still doubling down. But that's Brawley, and at least he said that Whelan kind of held his hand up. But on the bias thing, as long as, like, you definitely have a point, but like I think that, like, I don't want to miss out on the best pundits just because you said earlier on, the best pundits should be aware of their bias and should be able to analyse without letting that bias affect their analysis. Now, that affected Kieran Whelan and affected Richie Hogan, but let's say the people I like, let's say Tomás O'Shea on football and Anthony Daly in hurling, like two pundits that I'd like, for example, I wouldn't like to think that just because Clare and Kerry are involved in the match that they wouldn't be able to... Okay,
that's a fair point. You know. Yeah. I'd take Tomás O'Shea, but, like, I mean, obviously... You'll take Tomás O'Shea because you know he wouldn't go down that road. Exactly, I don't know. I mean, maybe... Well, I think Kieran Whelan's completely compromised himself ever doing a Dublin game again.
But RT have to be fully aware of the potential for that to happen if they get Kieran Whelan or Henry Shefflin in, and they have to be aware of how it's going to affect their credibility if what has happened in the last 3 weeks happens, because RT's credibility has been affected by that. By letting Kieran Whelan
do you wonder, do RT care? Are they delighted with this?
Because we're talking about it.
But has it gone to that now, that it's a circus? This is the Donald Trump type stuff. Do you know what I mean? And the Boris Johnson. This is who cares about whether it's good? People are talking about it. Who cares if we're telling the truth? People are talking about it. Is that punditry now? Is it a circus at half time and a circus at full time, and everyone goes mad on social media and that's it now?
Yeah, like I don't know if I'm mistaken. I don't think I am. The RT did put out a clip of that.
They did, yeah.
So
the Sunday game did,
They don't care. They're that was a sort of embarrassing piece of analysis.
Yeah,
that
and
you
they
want
put it
to
out.
bury. You don't want to that was the thing that they were picking as their best moment, and then maybe they're just feeding back reports and numbers and stuff like that because so many people are
interactions, engagements, all those. We know the analytics. Yeah.
But as a public service broadcaster, there has to be a balance there. There has to be an acknowledgement of the need for balance. That it can't just be about, you know, engagement and figures and stuff like that. That there has to be importance led towards balance, credibility, etc. As opposed to, oh, listen, everybody's talking about this, quids in. You know, this is brilliant.
Yeah. Well, no, you're right. To put out a clip of a pundit admitting to be biased and getting a call completely wrong, and to put that out. Jesus, is like, how would you even dream? You want to be burying that. You want to be taking that off the player. Anyways, we'll move on from that because I saw a tweet about David Clifford, and you know the general consensus was David Clifford's shooting was way off and didn't have one of his finest hours. The man's 20. He got fouled for the penalty. He got Johnny Cooper sent off. He roasted Johnny Cooper, which we don't see all that often. He got fouled for 2 tap over frees, and he scored 2 from play himself. He's only 20. That's his first ever All-Ireland final. Isn't it weird the standards we hold this fella to already? Like, I mean, that is a solid an All-Ireland final for most players. It's just now, you know, he's got that Joe Canning aura of a coming great, that this isn't good enough for us with him. Now we want to see him rattle a top corner and not miss.
He also set up the goal chance for Paul Geaney, didn't he? Which would have been a goal if James McCarthy wasn't so good. But he got in the position and then set it up. I knew that I was doing this watching the game because I was texting boys going, for God's sake, where is David Clifford? He's missing all these shots. But I was happy enough doing it because in my head it's like he's going to be probably the best player ever.
Right.
So it's like, this is the time now, All-Ireland final, put those shots over.
You can handle it.
And I know that it's at a higher standard, and it's not fair compared to other 20-year-olds, but he's going to be at a higher standard forever anyway. So I wanted to see him take the game by the scruff of the neck.
But I think he holds himself to that standard as well. I think that's he's after the game the last day. He's thinking, well, he's done all that, so that's on the positive side. But he's thinking, right, I missed 3 easy, well, maybe not easy, but 3 definitely
easy
scoreable opportunities
for
him in the first half, and the sickener for him will probably be the one he dropped into the keeper's hands in the second half. So loads of positive to take, but I'd say he's the type of guy that holds himself to that high standards that he'd be comfortable with that level of criticism.
I think too, maybe those 2 early misses just might have been kind of a reflection on the pressure he was under. Just because he's a happy-go-lucky type of fella, but let's be honest, if we're thinking this lad could easily take the game with a scruff of the neck, he's only 20. There's no doubt that's going. People are saying I'm great. I want to prove I'm great. You know what I mean? So now he's got a shot, and suddenly maybe a doubt will come into his mind. He's pulled that wide. Do you know what I mean? So I think he did well even to get to 2 points and fight against those 2 early misses. Because look what happened to Rory McIlroy in the last round of the Masters. You can crumble too in a situation like that. So marking, I'd say he would loved if Cooper, in a weird way, that Cooper wouldn't have if he didn't get sent off, because Fitzsimons didn't fall for his tricks as easily, and he didn't get on as much ball. Now the game changed a little bit in the second half as well. I'd say he was under a little bit of pressure. If one of those, maybe the next day, one of those first ones will go over, I think we might see a goal from him the next day.
Yeah, well, in fairness, what he does, he doesn't normally panic. He always plays the right ball. Remember we were saying about his first game for Kerry? You think he's going to take somebody on, but he passes it off when that's the right thing to do, and normally he always does that. And in fairness, the shots he missed were all, I think one of them, maybe he was rushing the shot, but the other ones, he deserved to take them on as well. And we've seen him play Hogan Cup finals and minor finals, scoring 4 goals. So in Kerry, that expectation's definitely there that David Clifford's going to dominate again, even though it's far higher standard.
So we look forward to seeing that. Stephen Rochford, I think he was on the AIB podcast. He's talking about a drawn match, so he was a good man to have on. We're going to have Chris Barrett on next Wednesday when we do our All-Ireland preview show to talk a little bit about the dynamic of a draw, how you prepare for the final, what your learnings are. And Stephen Rochford was saying they'll have video. I'd say Dublin will get that straight away. He says, I remember in 2016 they were on top of it while we were still travelling. It took us into Tuesday or Wednesday before we got going. Dublin will recalibrate very, very quickly based on geography. Physically, it'll be about getting through Wednesday night, then doing a bit next weekend and try and hit the ground running the next Saturday. So even it's funny that he was aware they're going home in the bus. Dublin are already on top of their analytics. But I'm wondering, why would Mayo not be on top? That's a separate team. They have their own jobs to do. Download your shit. Get it ready. The team travelling home, I didn't think should really have effect. I don't necessarily understand, but I would have thought that can be done up in cyberspace and you land home to all your analytics.
Not just because you're living in Dublin, you can get access to it straight away.
I don't think that should make much difference.
I know Jerry Flannery's on the rugby show here. He was talking about doing all that on the bus. So when you're going home, you're not analysing games when you're supposed to be spending time with your family. So when he was with Munster, they were doing all their analysis at the front of the bus. The technology's there. I don't know what made it.
Killian O'Connor said Mayo were doing it this year actually. On the way back from Kerry, they had access to the analytics on the way back.
Because we know during games you can get some real-time stats and analysis through, and GPS stats in game. So when someone's tiring, it's getting flagged up, and we know they have stats bang on in half time and they're reading off their kick out stats and all these kind of things. So we must ask Chris Barrett next week what Stephen's talking about here. What do they need? What is the bus journey home affecting? It's a Mayo whinge, Conor. I think that's what it is it?
We're not fond of that.
taking us into Tuesday or Wednesday as well. He's just skipped the whole Monday there too.
Yeah. Maybe he took the Monday off, Stephen. We don't know. Maybe it's a busy day in AIB and he just didn't get around to it.
I just wonder how much extra they can actually get done in that, like, compared to Dublin. Let's say if you go back to 2016, like how much are you actually going to do between the replay or the drawing game and the replay? Anyway, you probably do a little bit of analysis, but you don't want to go overboard on it either. Train a couple of times, so especially it'd be different if it was a week, but with 2 weeks, I'd say it's not much of a difference between what they'll be able to do and what Dublin will be able to do, despite the fact that they're the other side of the country.
I don't think so. I think the analytics I don't agree with. Obviously the journey home, getting the recovery done the next day, that's a disadvantage to Mayo or Kerry in comparison to Dublin. Like, I'd imagine Dublin could get the recovery going later that evening, get into their ice baths, get into a pool, have their meal, in whatever hotel they were staying in, all that done, and then they're ready to go maybe a day earlier than Mayo. Do you know, I can see that side. It's the analytics I'm a little bit confused about. So Conor Lane gets the replay. There's not been a word about Conor Lane. I see Conor Lane kind of, I don't know, does he have any unique selling points, Conor Lane? You don't really hear any kind of critique of him, or he seems to just be solid enough. He's a Cork man.
Kerry won't like that.
Won't like that. Well, like if they ran out through the Cork minor presentation, Conor Lane won't like that.
Let's get it going here, will he?
So I don't know, but Conor Lane seems to be all right. Maurice Deegan is his linesman, leashman, solid, and David Coldrick is running the other line. Obviously David Goff can't get the replay. I have to hold my hands up. I don't think I even said it on Monday, and completely apologise to David Goff for doubting that he could do the job, or maybe doubting in a pressure scenario whether he could actually deliver the goods, and the pressure going into the game, would he go too far against Dublin or too far with Dublin based on what people were saying. And to be honest, the man was flawless. So I will never ever criticise David Goff for his next Dublin game. Maybe the one after that. I wouldn't doubt David Goff for a Dublin game again. I think the way he reffed that game blew my doubts, and made, if you're listening back on the podcast, would make me sound a little bit silly in the things I was saying. But I suppose they were based off a previous Dublin game, which maybe it's a transfer away from that school in Terranure and Kevin McManaman pushing on,
Well, it takes a big man to hold a hand up, will he?
We'll do what RT didn't do. We'll bury that older stuff.
Delete that podcast.
It was so good though. I was wondering, geez, I'd love to see him reffing it again, because he got all the decisions right and the game was brilliant.
What is the policy of that?
That he might be influenced by decisions he made in the first game. I don't know. I
don't know. It must be something to do with that. If there was controversy in it, they just made it policy not to leave it across the board and find another ref. But after the performance he had, he seems like the very logical. And this is the one thing I always say about Goff. My main criticisms of Goff, and I said this on Monday, was that Connacht final. And when I saw him blowing up these frees off the ball, and it was my first time to see him doing it, and it's a Connacht final. And fair enough, some of the defenders had a little bit of hands on, and I'm like, that happens in games. Give me a break. And I thought that was completely him trying to say, look at me. Now, considering he's so consistent at that now my criticism has moved to the defenders. You know what he doesn't like. Now that he's consistent at this, he didn't just pull this out of his hat that day.
It's in the rules as well.
And it's in the rules. Now, some of them can be a little bit flimsy, but at the same time, that's his thing. Players, you have to know that's his thing. So if Conor Lane's marking the next day, Johnny Cooper could get away with manhandling Clifford. You don't know. You have to play referees the way you play teams. So I've no problem with the way Goff referees now. And now I say, if a lad's holding, I don't say, Goff, what are you blowing that for? That's soft. I'm saying, why are you putting your hands near him, you idiot? You know what Goff doesn't like.
Yeah, and part of that's sort of one of the biggest reasons I'd love to see him refereeing again, because it keeps the conditions the same. It's not going to be a different game because it's a different referee.
That's a good point.
It is a good point. That's why I would love to see him reffing it again, but he's not, so we'll have to see how Conor Lane. You'd hope Conor Lane would protect the forwards the way Goff does, because they do need that protection. And to be honest, even though some of them are soft, the minute you're blowing for that, you're gone. Because played corner forward long enough to know you're being pulled and dragged, and you'll whinge about it as much as you can to the umpire, to everyone. Your man gets a yellow card, he can't do anything to you again, and now you can relax and play the game. That kind of old battle you have to get over is gone. But with Goff, that battle never starts, because any cornerback with any brains would know he's watching me off the ball. He's got two eyes on me. So it's definitely an interesting one. Have this down. So there's reduced ticket prices, right? and this is just pure GAA and the whole complaining culture. So when the tickets increased, right, there was war, the usual Twitter, social media nonsense and outrage, and this is a disgrace, it's gone up. And like, they have a point that it's gone up. Do you see the same people complimenting them for reducing the tickets this time? There's not a dicky bird. I didn't see a dicky bird about this. So when they actually reduced the tickets by a third, stand tickets are 60 and terrace tickets are available for 30, and discounted children's tickets will cost a tenner. And none of them are going on general sale. They're going between the competing counties. Did you see the GAA getting widely complimented for reducing the ticket prices by a third?
No, but I don't know that they deserve to be. Is this not policy? Like when
it's GAA policy though.
Yeah.
Is that every sports policy?
Well, maybe not. But I know that like replays the last couple of years has always been this way. They were reduced to this level. Like I don't know that the GAA deserve compliments for or praise for taking it down, because I would have been. I wasn't saying it on Twitter or anything like that, but I would have been one of the people who objected to the price of the All Ireland final in the first place. I thought €90 was way too excessive. So I don't know. Like I think that should be the least, that like €60 is the maximum that it should be for an All Ireland final, and so I don't know, I wouldn't be necessarily paying compliments to the GAA for setting that price. Yeah,
I don't know, like I mean Cheddar changed my mind on this. I was kind of giving out about the increase as well, and then he's like this is our flagship All Ireland final event. You'll go to a rugby match, could be €120. You could go to a soccer match, could be over that as well. You would go to the All Ireland final 10 times over any of those other sports, and you're paying 90 for it. It's a one-off game. They have to make money out of it. That money goes back into the clubs. I don't think it's that outrageous. People want to pay it. You'd fill Croke Park probably 10 times with that price. The only problem with the GAA is that they should tier their prices so that the worst seat in the house should not cost the same as the best seat in the house. I think that's the criticism. But I think making a lot of money out of your big game of the season, especially when this isn't going into people's pockets, it's going back into and that's the only big games that the GAA get to make their money on, is the kind of knockout All Ireland. Yeah. That's when the provincial councils are out of the mix, and it's just GAA money. I don't really mind. I've changed my mind on it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair argument. I don't necessarily like comparing it to other sports for a start, because the GAA is different and I think it should be different. And yeah, I agree with the tier structure as well. I don't think it was fair that everybody was paying 90 quid for a ticket in the first place. It's just when you kind of look, when I looked into it, or when people were putting up, let's say, the costs of everything that went into it, it just seemed a little bit excessive, and I think that
I'd be more on the train tickets when I know train up from Kerry. The train from Kerry is outrageous. What about bloody? Let's give out about Varanker and Ross, the transport minister.
And the other thing was that I don't think because
leave John Horan alone.
I don't think because it'll sell out 10 times over is a reason to put the price at an excessive level in the first place. That's just me. I completely accept your argument as well, but that's where I become.
Wait and you hear this. This is the 5th All-Ireland final replay of the decade between hurling and football. The 5 All-Ireland replays have netted them 15 million in revenue. Oh, the old replay. Blow it up, Ref. All right, we're going to come back and we'll talk about some of the managerial merry-go-round appointments and departures. All right, so manager appointments and departures. So we're going to start off with Rory Gallagher. This is probably one of the highest profile ones. There's been some amount of comings and goings in the last week, hasn't there? It's been off the charts, between managers staying on, between managers going and managers being appointed. So Rory Gallagher has been appointed to Derry, and this will bring a tear to your eye, Conan, as you obviously know. Enda Muldoon's part of the backroom team. How can you criticise this management team ever?
I'm not.
Well, I'll have to think twice about disappointing Big Enda ever.
I mean, I'm biased, Willie. You know that.
You can admit you're biased towards Enda Muldoon, right?
And
Paddy Bradley.
And Paddy Bradley. It's an interesting one. So they went through the whole nominations process, asked clubs to put forward.
There was controversy about this, right?
Managers, and three managers were put forward. So Mickey Donnelly, who was the under-20 manager, Johnny McBride, a Derry legend who's managing Loop, and Sean McGoldrick and Peter Doherty together, who are just 2 legendary club managers in Derry. Like Sean McGoldrick's been with Coleraine for 50 years.
All the lads, Sean Leo's father.
Yeah, and so that would have been a really sort of interesting one as well. But Turns out that Derry had approached Rory Gallagher as well and asked him would he interview. And then when that news got out, that before any of the interview process, Derry were doing this, all the other guys just sort of dropped out and thought, what's the point? You've approached somebody else. We were nominated. He wasn't.
Right.
So they all dropped out. It left Rory Gallagher on his own.
But the clubs were going to vote this down. They weren't going to ratify it. Was that what I was reading?
Yeah, so like Mal McMullen was reporting that before Tuesday's ratification process that all the clubs met and sort of put forward a proposal that, this would be blocked, that Rory Gallagher's appointment would be blocked. But that was shot down then at the meeting on Tuesday. A vote 24-15, and then there was a bit of controversy about that because the county board has 11 votes. And they won by 11.
Right.
So it was time. And 9 clubs didn't show up as well, which obviously didn't help. I think it was 9. But so there was a bit of controversy about it. But as it turns out, it's Rory Gallagher's in, Kieran Mina is with him, and Enda Muldoon.
Yeah, so the big opposition to Rory Gallagher is obviously his style of play. It's depressing to watch. We obviously had Tommaso Corrigan on the show here. Anyone didn't hear his interview, or he was part of the show for the full hour. He had some scathing things to say about enjoyment within, his squad. Now, Rory Gallagher's point on this is that, look, I didn't have the talent in Fermanagh. We thought he had enough forwards, and, he has this one way of playing. Now, apparently with Killybegs this year, he's not playing like that with them. Now, he played at Will Kilcar, which is bizarre considering the talent they had. Gallagher is quoted today as saying that there's more than one way of playing. I can, play more than one way. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he'll go into Derry and do that same thing? Like I think public perception has gone against that. I saw your man Poacher in Gaelic Life again. It's just a tweet off the GAA account. He was promoting a piece and he was saying, talking about coaches changing their tactics mid-game or changing it up. I said, mate, you haven't changed how you play in the last, I don't know how long. I don't know if you're a defensive manager to the level Rory Gallagher is. Can you change and coach that when you have since he came into management in 2011, he knows nothing else.
Yeah.
He knows nothing else outside of transition, zonal defence and counter-attack football. I'd say he's forgotten. Now, obviously, he played in the same era as me, so he knows, he remembers it. But I suppose coaching it might be a little bit different. He'll find it a challenge unless he's dipped his toes in the attacking football waters with Killybegs.
I suppose my thing on that is I think he can change it. Whether he will or not, I don't know. But my worry for Derry would be, let's say, if he tries to implement some sort of philosophy that's far different to what we know him for so far. But if the things go against him, will he have the guts to stick with it then? Or that's my fear, and that I think it nearly happened in Tyrone to a certain extent, that when you try and change your spots, but then when the chips are down, that there's a tendency to go back to what you know. And I think if he tries something new with Derry and it goes against him, that then he'll end up reverting back to the defensive football that we kind of know him for.
Yeah. See, this is the funny thing is, it's probably Carlow and Fermanagh are the two still persisting with retreating back ahead of the ball, that they're not pressuring the ball as it's coming up the field. As we know, there's a risk and reward. If you're really slow with your build-up, as teams are tackling you, building it up, they'll end up with 13 behind the ball. That's grand. So a lot of teams end up with the 13 behind the ball. It's just the likes of Fermanagh and Carlow will never end up not with 13 behind the ball, or never give you a chance of a kick pass because they're gone off ahead of the ball and they're in zones. That football's gone so outdated and defunct that, that if Poacher or Rory Gallagher comes into your county, I can see why Derry people would be concerned about it. That you don't want that running back ahead of the ball and getting back ready in his own, and that's it. And God, there's more to Gaelic football than that.
Yeah, and look, we've had enough arguments throughout the years about whether teams should do this or not, or whether it's in the spirit of the game or it's nice to watch. But it comes back to the logic of it now. It's
gone.
So out of date.
Gone,
and with the Fermanagh thing, I know they got promoted and then they almost got promoted again and got to an Ulster final, so he can look at that.
But that's league, you see. League is irrelevant to championship. We know that. Dublin were beaten 3 times in the league this year, and people tried to hold on to that and go, they're vulnerable. What are you on about?
Yeah, and what I always think with the Fermanagh team is, if you can't get the 2 Quigleys in the team and Thomas Corrigan, then you've got a really bad system. They're your best players. They're going to win games for you, and if it's not revolved around that, what are you doing? You're not trying to win games, really. And in his interview in the BBC there yesterday was sort of a little bit concerning. So he said, going into Fermanagh, I was looking for a really short-term hit. what are you looking for coming into Derry? You're not going to get like 10-year project here. You got a 3-year term, which is generous enough. But like Derry are in Division 3, a tough Division 3 that they're going to be expected to push on and try and get out of. And if they don't make it to the Ulster final and John Horne's new championship comes in, Derry are going to drop into the B championship as well. Yeah. So he needs to get success quickly at Derry, otherwise people will start turning on him regardless of what football he's playing. So if he's thinking, I needed a short-term hitter for Mana, he'll probably need that at Derry, and if he thinks the way to get it is playing men behind the ball, then he might do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. If he wants to get up out of Division 3, it worked with Fermanagh. I'm going to get you out of Division 3 playing this, and then it's like, oh God, you know, listen, I think attendances are down fairly well at Derry games. I said it'd be really good through the floor if that's... Everybody's gone against that now, even though you could see the logic of it for a while it was like this trap, and then the other team will give you the turnover, now you're gone. And now that teams don't do that anymore, you're just basically inviting them onto your 45. They'll eventually break you down, and if they do give it away, they'll work so hard to get it back that your counter-attack won't even work. You know, it's just so stupid now. But anyway,
they'll have a half-back line in place and you'll have one forward.
Yeah. And it's just like, it worked for about 3 years. It worked up until 14, maybe a bit in 15, and then it just started fizzling out to the point that 17, Dublin just blew it out of the water so much that they gave the template. Right, another one is Banty to Monaghan. I was surprised by this one. Banty would be from the old school of management. I don't think he'd even deny that. He managed Monaghan from 04 to 10 and had some very good performances out of the team. Again, the kind of style of football then was more like play it as you see it and work hard, and most of your team stayed in around their positions. And then he went with Meath and Wexford, didn't do great with Meath, got Wexford out of Division 4. There's no word on his backroom team yet. I think with these managers like Sabanti, he needs a younger tactician, for example. So what Banty would be great, I'm sure I've no doubt at, is motivating players. I'm sure players would like him. He's a likeable sort of a man, and I think he definitely needs somebody that has been involved with the modern game a little bit.
Yeah, I thought I saw it was Peter Donnelly on the Monaghan website.
Saw that too,
he's in there, is he?
Peter Donnelly, Conor Laverty, David McCaig and Ray Boyne, who obviously was with Dublin. And
Boyne's in with them, right? Okay, so that's actually, I didn't see that. So that's his backroom team.
Yeah.
All right, that seems to be okay then.
Peter Donnelly one really surprised me because he's just gone from Tyrone to Ulster Rugby and now suddenly
that was
involved
it,
in Monaghan.
How?
I'm not even sure. I saw his name on the ticket as well. So.
Right, well that does look like a strong management team then, you know. Like, I mean, so yeah, I've completely gone away from that. Might try and delete that bit out of the podcast. Do you know what? We'll put that out as a promo piece, right? We'll do an RTE on it. Right, Paul Galvin to Wexford. We kind of touched on this. This is you're trying to analyse some of the other ones, and this one's just like I haven't a clue what's going to happen. What's going to happen here? I don't have a clue.
But I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, listen, it's a great appointment for Wexford. It's a great appointment for Paul because a bit like John Sugru when he took over Laois, the only way is up. He can't really fail because they can't go down any. He'll fail to get them up, but he won't go down any lower. To finish second in Division 4, for God's sake, and they're much better than that. Having said that, they seem to be losing some of their young players to Aussie rules, and I think there's another one gone over to England playing soccer. But this is more of a watch this space. I'm not making any judgments on this. This is Paul Galvin, who's unpredictable. He could be gone after 2 months. I don't know.
Yeah. In fairness to him, he does a tactical column. He does a column in the Sunday Times that I always find interesting. I always find it a little bit different from everything you find elsewhere. So that's what I think. Wexford won't certainly conform to any kind of. Nor they'll bring something different. Whether that be effective for him, I don't know. But I don't want to call it a free pass. But as you said, he's in Division 4. It's kind of pressure free, so to a certain degree, which I think will obviously help him.
They will play with intensity. They'll tackle hard and they'll do a lot of kick passing. That's what I know about Paul. He's on the podcast, and they won't be soloing and hopping. He hates soloing and hopping.
Will they be trying to talk about kickouts and then Paul Galvin be sitting there going, one thing I noticed, they keep soloing the balls again.
Look up, move it fast. Mick O'Dwyer, that's Kerry football. I mean, that's what you're brought up with. Jack O'Connor to Kildare. So he's been ratified. We know his backroom team is Ross Galvin, who's the Moorfield manager, who Jack would have close relationship with because his 2 young lads play with Moorfield, and Tom Cribben, who, while I fell out with him as Laois manager, which wouldn't be out of character for me, he's a very good manager, was then anyways, and a really sound sort of a man as well, so players will like him. And he did a good job at Westmeath, got them into 2 Leinster finals. So that looks like a very strong management team. I think Jack O'Connor will do really well. I think Kildare, what they needed was a proven winner. I think somebody, like, I can only tell you now that when Mick O'Dwyer took us over and told us we were going to be All-Stars, there's no leash man could ever tell us that and believe them. Mick O'Dwyer told us, and he was sincere about it, and he got us 3 All-Stars. And he, like, when Jack O'Connor goes into Kildare and says, "You're as good as any Kerry player that I've managed," imagine what that'll do to some of those. Yeah. But that's a fact, lads. I've been told, like, okay, Mick didn't tell me that I was as good as any Kerry player, but on those lines, do you know what I mean? It just makes you feel 10 feet tall, that you're getting that, because you always, in the back of your mind, you're like, these lads are on another level to us. Yeah. So Jack O'Connor will come in and he'll tell the lads that need to be told that. You know, the lads that might not have the confidence level of he doesn't need to tell Daniel Flynn. Daniel Flynn knows that. Do you know what I mean? But maybe Daniel Flynn mightn't be like, everybody enjoys hearing it. Whether you need it is probably the question. But I think this is a great appointment. I keep saying it, that Kildare are by far the number 2 team in Leinster. They're a Super 8 team on a yearly basis if they have everybody. Like Paul Cribben and Daniel Flynn were just losses that couldn't be replaced this year. I think they're a very good team, and I think Jack O'Connor, with his prestige and with his 3 All-Irelands, like, you know, and a couple of minors, and he just has that aura about him. This is a match made in heaven for me.
Yeah, and it is such a difference. You know, how many managers are there that come from the other direction, where they're always talking about the other team or what Kerry are doing, or do you think Kerry would do that, or would that be good enough for them? Whereas this guy's coming from Kerry, and as you say, saying that you're all as good as those boys. Like, yeah. Just self-belief more than anything.
Will be self-belief, a bit of self-belief, and, you know, we have Jack O'Connor on our side, and I think that'll be a good one. Another weird one on the hurling front, lads, don't know, have you much to say about this? Michael Fennelly to Offaly. So Michael Fennelly wouldn't really have any management experience. He was in, actually, coincidentally, he's in with the Kildare backroom team as strength and conditioning coach with Cian O'Neill. So he's still playing with Ballyhale Shamrocks. I'm not sure if this is an indication that he might have to give that up. Don't know if you can still play club hurling, although Eddie Brennan did it with Laois. He's still playing with Ballyhale or Greg, Ballycallan. Yeah.
They got to the intermediate.
They beat Port Laois in the Leinster final. And he did it, so he can probably play away with Ballyhale maybe. So it's an interesting one. Eddie Brennan obviously got the Laois job and did so well, but Eddie Brennan had under 21. You know, he'd served his dues with the under 21s with Kilkenny. He'd gotten them into an All-Ireland final. So Michael Fennelly is probably, it's a bit of a left field one. Yeah. No one's saying that he won't be very good. He'll have Brian Cody as his only managerial influence outside of club manager. So listen, it'll be a bit like Paul Galvin. It's hard to say when you're not really sure how that one's going to go.
Offaly hurling really needs a shot in the arm, given after what happened to him last year. And like everything I've read and heard about Michael Fennelly strikes me as really, really intelligent, really kind of positive guy. And he'll have come, as you said, from a culture of excellence in Kilkenny. He worked for, like, Eddie Brennan has his own credentials, but I would imagine that being part of that Kilkenny setup for so long has rubbed off on his management style, and Michael Fennelly can bring that too. So I think it's no more than Galvin, like for the profile of Offaly hurling, will get a big boost as well. And given where they're coming from this year, I think that's the shot in the arm that they need. Really.
Just on that, because we're talking about Michael Fennelly, but on the other side, it's a very, very difficult job, because we talked about this in the hurling show. That Offaly team at the moment is a little bit toxic. There's fellas in there and the effort they're putting in is very questionable. The culture in the squad is not to work hard in matches, in games, and not to take criticism, to answer back. Then the culture within pundits in the county is to critique the manager and, you know, kind of give the players a free pass. Michael Fennelly, for an inexperienced manager, has a shit hard job there. That's the truth. That's as difficult a job in hurling or football in the whole country. I'm not exaggerating. It's really, really difficult.
And they're Christy Ring this year, right?
They're down to Christy Ring.
You have to wonder how up for it everybody's going to be this year.
He could have a lot of retirements, because their two best forwards, Shane Dooley and Joe Bergen, they've pushed well on now. So whether they'll be interested in playing Christy Ring. Look, he obviously wants to get on the managerial ladder. I'd be giving that Offaly job a wide berth. I know Paddy Power might have had myself and the Buff Egan as 10,000 to 1 outsiders to get the job. Right, Andy McEntee's kept on in Meath until 2022. This seems like a very smart appointment. I don't think Meath are the real deal. They got into the Super 8s, now Division 1 it's a very, very good achievement for them to keep Andy on for 3 years, because he's done very good work to get them at that level. Even though I don't think they're world beaters, he has them playing well for how good they are, getting into Super 8's Division 1. I think that's as far as this Meath team can go until some of these younger players after successful minor team get up and kind of maybe bring them to the next level. But Andy McEntee, you'd have no problem. He'd be the one that was going to do it for them.
Yeah, like they're well on the road now. Like, and as Keane was saying, now they just need this experience in Division 1 next year.
Yeah, and giving him 3 years is a good one as well, so that players know exactly where to stand. Colm Collins is staying with Clare. 7th year. I think only Mickey Hart is longer serving. Would I be right in saying that? I actually read 2 names and I forgot the other one, but Mickey Hart, I'm going to put the 2 of you on the spot. Not much to say about Colm Collins. They're back down in Division 3 and they're in a Poxy provincial championship. They're guaranteed to draw Kerry in a semi-final this year again, because they do it every year. So it's like groundhog season for Clare. But it's good to see Colm. He's one of the Gaelic football's good guys, so he's still there. Kevin Walsh has left Galway, so they're down Micheál Donoghue. You're loving this, Conor, all this disarray over the border. He's gone from Galway. A lot of people saying he's leaving Galway in a better position than he got them, and he is, but he definitely slipped with them. You know, in the last year was very disappointing. I think they're better. I think they're a great team to take over. And I've said this.
I'd agree with that.
Predict them. They've got fierce talent. That if you get that, just those couple of tweaks, and find yourself a wing back. You need to find a goalkeeper. And I think they're not far away. I think that's a very good Galway team with strike forwards that are really needed. Yeah,
it's absolutely okay to recognise what Kevin Welch has done for Galway, but also to criticise the style of play maybe that he's played for the last couple of years. I mean, when he took them over, Galway were nothing in Connacht really. They'd been on the end of a few hidings from Mayo for a few years, to the extent that they've completely turned that rivalry around, especially in Connacht. I know Mayo beat Galway this year, but we haven't beaten them in Connacht in a long time. But that's it. By the end of his time, I don't think he was using Galway's resources to the best of their ability. Let's say, some absolutely cracking forwards there that I don't think the style of play necessarily suited. And I think that I think that there'll be a big emphasis on whoever is coming in Galway to kind of channel that and to get back to a more traditional style of Galway football. And I think that the contenders that have been touted, including Pádraig Joyce, whose Galway under 20 team were very highly rated, playing a nice brand of football this year, I think he'll bring it. I think Kevin O'Brien, I think, has maybe been mentioned. Actually, Stephen Rochford has been mentioned, but then he seems the Donegal backroom team has been confirmed as well.
I think he's staying there. John Divilly's been mentioned too. He's obviously got experience with Sigerson Cup with UCD. So that's it. Pádraig Joyce could probably be the front runner there. Yeah, you mentioned Kevin O'Brien as well. It's interesting. The problem with Galway was that, in fairness to Kevin Walsh, he identified that the zonal tactics were outdated, and he tried to move it away from it this year, and I was a little bit confused, and it was neither here nor there, and I'm not sure Kevin knew how to move away from it, you know what I mean, properly, and he's probably right to have left it after 5 years now, so it'll be interesting to see. It's funny enough that he had a statement, and the Galway GAA website deleted a part of it. So when they put it up on their website, some of it had been taken out, and this is the part that was taken out. I emphatically believe that there are great things to come for Galway football. Having had the opportunity to work with professionals at the top of their field over the last number of years, I would like to see the recommendations in our reports to the county board, which included facilities and equipment, operations, alignment and development of underage teams through to senior level, finance, competition structures, proper development and welfare, medical screening and deep level coaching continue to be implemented in the interests of Galway football going forward. Galway County Board don't want to entertain this. So he's given obviously recommendations on how they can improve, and they just took this down after put a whole statement up except for this part. Like, I mean, what is going? It's North Korea stuff here. Like, I mean, that's just ridiculous.
And did they not read the statement anyway before they put it up? Like, they put it up and thought, shit, Jesus, did you see that line in it?
Was it taken down, or it just wasn't put up?
It went up originally and then that was taken out of it. Like, yeah, so right. I liked the fact they took out I believe great things are coming for Galway football as well. That was part of it.
Once these lads come up to the standards needed. Davy Fitz, he's staying in Wexford. That was a big news breaking this week, so obviously Wexford people would be absolutely delighted to keep Davy on, especially after their performance against Tip. Interestingly, this morning, Jerry O'Connor, who's Clare joint manager, he stepped down. So it'll be interesting to see whether Donal Maloney, who's his joint manager and partner, obviously with the under 21s and for the last 3 years, whether he's going to stay on or not. Now, I didn't see that in the article I read, although I did get Banty's backroom team one wrong, so you just have to look that one up for yourselves. And then that's it. So the last one is the biggest appointment of the whole summer, which has gone completely under the radar on this show, and that's Derek McGrath to the Laois Minor Hurlers. Can you believe this? What a coup. What a coup is all I can say. Coup. Right? So Derek McGrath is taking over our minors, and any of the hurling show, well, this isn't even a general show. This is supposed to be a football show, but we're going to talk a little bit about hurling. Myself and Cheddar, I was asking Cheddar, I saw highlights of the Laois Minor Hurlers playing Westmeath. They hammered Westmeath now, and it was as good a performance. Like, Jesus, some of the hurling was out of the top drawer. Really skillful hurling, like hurling you would associate with Tipperary or Kilkenny, and it just looked so off the charts for Laois Minors. So I was saying to Cheddar, here, look, are our minor hurlers brilliant, or am I just overthinking it? Oh, they are, yeah. And the funny thing about that minor team, Wooly, is that there's 13 or 14 of them underage again next year. So this is our greatest minor team in a long, long time, right? Now, Wexford ended up beating them, kind of pointed close enough, but they got goals. They ended up beating them by 12 points now, but all these young lads are in their last year, this year. So coming up through the ranks, they won, they followed up a successful Tony Forrestal, which is, I think it might be under 16 All-Ireland. And then they won the Arabon Tournament Cup in Tipperary last year, beat Waterford in the final. So I think they're like under 16, under 17 tournaments, and Laois are winning those All-Irelands at that age group. And now they're going to come up. Well, it's under 17, or is it minor at hurling? I think hurling is still minor.
I think it's still minor,
21. Yeah. So that's it. Derek McGrath knows a good team when he sees, let's say, the Laois delegates that went down to Derek, do you want a minor All-Ireland? We can make that happen for you. But that's a really exciting appointment. I can't see Derek going in playing, overly defensive tactics. I'm not sure that he'll have to find out what works for those players or whatever. But to have Eddie Brennan over our senior hurlers and Derek McGrath over our minor hurlers, this is fairy tale stuff, lads. Trust me, for Laois hurling. Laois hurling's on the up. That's all I have to say. And yeah, what a coup for Laois hurling. So that's it, lads. You've nothing to say on Derek McGrath, do you?
No,
let's not fool ourselves
I
here.
had the privilege of working with
you
Derek
did,
McGrath,
yeah.
and
You did.
My God, like, what a man. And just seems to watch games all day when he's not doing anything else. He was on holidays one stage, just texting us these clips from games and stuff like that out in Spain. Like, yeah, honestly, it's an unreal coup. And obviously people thought he was going to go to Waterford. Some people said Galway. He was offered another job.
It's a good one for him with Waterford to Portlaoise now, with the bypass of Waterford City. I think Derek's on the other side. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes, so it's not even a killer of a drive for him. So it's perfect. Worked out for everybody. Let's hope. Watch this space. Laois Minor Hurlers, you've heard it here first on the football show. There you go. We'll be back on Monday. We're going to do a review of the Camogie All-Ireland final. Yes, it's a first here in the GAA. You've heard that right. The Camogie All-Ireland final. We're going to keep the hurling show going, even though Camogie isn't really hurling and it's a different association, but we're going to do one anyway. It's close enough. We'll call it I'm going to call it hurling on Monday. I'm refusing to call it Camogie. Right, we'll talk to you Monday. I better shut up here.